Evening. Hello, Lena LAKHANI. You're muted.
Well, yeah, no, I'm not anymore. Yeah.
Oh, I'm just another one of the panelists. My name is.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. Thank you for participating in this.
Thank you.
I look
Hi,
forward.
Judy.
Hello?
Yes.
Hi,
Hi.
I'm Judy. Hi. Hi, Nina.
What? How are you?
Okay, just fine. What are we supposed to do?
Nothing. We're just supposed to. I'm going to send an email that I have to send. So I'm going to do that.
Yeah,
I think we're just meant to be here to check the sound.
We're here under orders of Don Fitz.
Yeah, this is Joe. I think Don wanted all the speakers on early, just make sure audio was working and everything.
Okay.
So,
it's working. Can you make sure that I can share my screen, please?
sure. Who said that? I'm sorry.
Judy Ansel.
Okay.
Just make me a co-host, please.
Let's see.
And you're going to do, is that Joe that was talking?
That's Joe.
Yeah.
Let's see. How do I make a co-host?
You go to participants
Mm-hmm.
and then you look at my name, Judy Ansel. You go to the right where it says more,
Yeah.
and a drop-down menu will say make co-host.
I don't see that. I just see make host.
No, you should be able to make me a co-host.
You should be the host.
Yeah, I
You're
am the
the
host.
host.
There's no option for make co-host. Just make
Oh, no.
host.
There is somewhere.
Usually is.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
It's the way it was set up. It's
So
whoever
You
set it.
go to participants and then you click more.
Mhm.
No, actually, you just,
It's
Oh,
not
I'm not the
click-
host, so I can't do it. I'm usually the host in my state. Sorry,
Yeah.
y'all. Tony and Dega here. Sorry.
Who is the host?
Joe.
You should probably make me a co-host.
Okay,
too.
you know what? Here we go. Under security, I can say allow participants to share screen. So now you should be able to share your screen.
Who's that? Judy? That should be able to?
Nope, can't. Oh, it's because you're sharing. Okay.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Okay,
that's fine.
there we go.
That's fine.
Okay, go ahead and try it. Then at least I'll work out the bugs. Learn a
Yeah,
little
I
more
can
each
share
time.
it.
So
Okay.
if you go to the participants, you can't see how to make someone a co-host.
No, it didn't. I don't see that option.
If you like double click on the person maybe, or
Nah.
It's when you set it up, you have to go back to your Zoom
Yeah.
account and change the
Can you do that while the meeting's going on though?
I don't know.
Yeah, I'll just remember for next time. For now, you can share if I unshare, so we should be good.
Okay.
Digger.
as long as we don't get bombed. Can y'all hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
Hey, Joe, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. When we were setting this up, the most participants we could have was 100. And I said, well, let's spend the money for it to get the next higher level. Did we get more than 100 registering for it?
We had 342 registered.
Whoa,
That, our next highest runner-up was 72, wasn't it?
I think so.
Okay, so this is a little bit bigger.
No pressure.
I want to thank everybody for sending it out to
Yeah,
all
I went-
content.
I went all out.
Thank you.
So yeah, I love doing that. And this is a wonderful event. And oh, I need to get your book.
Yeah, please do.
I have your book. I just need to get it. I want to like hold it up.
Oh, great.
So I haven't had a chance to read all of
I
it.
won't do that because I'm quite modest, but you please go ahead.
Absolutely. I'm not. No, I'm just joking. No. It's wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm just sending an email. I have a 7 a.m. flight tomorrow to Texas. So I'm just going to send this email now so that I can go straight to bed once we're done. So just give me, I am here, but I'm just going to focus on this for a minute.
You can leave your mask home.
Yeah, I'll be wearing 2 masks. We all wear 2 masks in New York now. So we're on a 2 mask.
I'll be right back in 1 minute.
Hi, Digger. Don, listen, we're waiting for you. We're on.
I presume we should all be mute when we're not talking later, particularly when Nina's talking. I hope everybody with 300 and some odd people prospective to join, I would hope that they're joining muted to start with.
I mean, my experience is that the number of people that register don't come to the event. I mean,
yeah.
so we won't have that many, right? Can I just ask Don, will somebody, I've got 20 minutes, right? I'm just going to talk, but when I've got 5 minutes left, will you just give me a signal or just let me know? I'll put it in the chat or something. And then, so then I know to shut up.
This is Barb, and I'm the timekeeper.
Oh, great.
So, yeah, I will be giving you a 10-minute in the chat. I'll send it to you and to Tony. And then I can also give a 5-minute and a 1 minute, whatever is your pleasure.
Great. Yeah, that's great. Thank you very much.
Yeah. I have my kitchen timer right here. I'm all ready.
I'm going to duck out and get my watch so it's right next to me.
Okay, I can't reach there. You got your cookie?
I did.
So Barb, is this when it's
I don't see him.
our turn to talk and we want to share the screen, the host is going to be able to turn our screens on, is that right?
I think Joe will do that, right, Joe?
Yeah, like we tried out a minute ago.
Okay,
I won't be shared while somebody's speaking. I won't share my screen while somebody's speaking. So when it's your turn to speak, while Tony introduces you, I'll put up a picture of your book or whatever. So I'll share my screen briefly. And after he's done introducing, I'll unshare and then you can go ahead and share screen. Jerome hasn't called yet.
I am back. Dawn, you here? Is Dawn here?
Yes,
No.
Don. I'm
Okay, now I'm
muted.
unmuted. You can
Oh,
actually.
okay, yeah, it's okay. So did you want to get started? And since there's so many people signed up, did you want to get started maybe about 7:04 or something? You know, like to give them a couple minutes to get in?
Yes.
Anywhere between 7:03 and 7:05.
Okay, okay. So I'll start 7:04, 7:05. Okay.
Okay. Or you could even say at 7, welcome to the Zoom. We are giving people a couple of minutes to sign on since there's some folks might be late.
Wonderful. And are you going to be starting recording at 7?
It looks to me like it's recording now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Cool.
it
Okay.
is. I must have had it set to start automatically, so I'll just let it go and I'll trim
Okay.
it later.
Yep. So a couple of calls into Daniel, who's our stat keeper, and couldn't reach him at either phone number, but hopefully we'll have a stat keeper. Hey, Harris County, greetings from Greens in Harris County. I grew up in Harris County.
Affiliate to Houston, Texas, yeah.
I got a quick question, Don. I want you to hear two things. I'm just like, one of my headsets, it's kind of big, but like it might sound better. So I'm just going to do two. Okay, this is me on my smaller one. I just hate having a big thing on my head, but it might be better. Testing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then I'm going to switch to the other one real quick. Hold on.
There I am.
There's Digger.
Hi, Digger.
Hi, Digger.
I had to jump through a lot of hoops to get to this broadcast, and I had already registered, and it made me go through the whole thing again.
Oh, no.
Yeah, well, that's why we say 6:40, because these electronic.
Don, stop the lecture. I'm here.
So this is my other one, testing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Well, the first one was a lot louder.
It was great. Okay. Well, that's the smaller one. So that's good. Okay, good. Thank you.
Let me get some. I see. There we go.
Hey, Dan.
Hey, what's happening?
How are you?
I'm here. I'm keeping pretty busy these days, but definitely wanted to see this. And who's facilitating tonight? Because, oh, is it?
Jerome, can you hear us okay? Jerome Bauer, can you hear us all right?
You want another piece? Yeah, I think so. Good. I want a small piece because that's really rich.
Do you have the agenda in front of you?
No. It's in my head.
I can't remember when I'm supposed to make my announcement.
Oh, after the speaker speak. And
Yeah. Mm-hmm. All right.
Dan Hallinger,
Yes,
how do you pronounce Dilma's last name?
pardon me?
Dilma Rousseff. Is that the correct?
Rousseff.
Huh?
Dilma Rousseff.
Dilma Rousseff. Okay. That's
Just don't ask me anything. I have to speak in Portuguese.
okay. Well, I have reference to a dam in the Arctic Circle in Russia. I guess you probably wouldn't know how to pronounce that site.
Somebody is making a lot of noise. If they could mute themselves, it'd be good.
Wow. 80 participants.
There'll be more.
It's impressive. Going up all the time.
So everyone, thank you for being patient. We are waiting on folks to get logged on and everything, and sometimes that takes a minute.
So I'm supposed to keep stack for the question and answer period. So we just need to announce that they should go to chat to request to be asked a question.
Correct, and I believe it's *9. I'm going to double check really quickly. *9 if folks are on the phone to raise their hand, but we prefer people to put stack in the chat.
Yes, yes, very good. If they do *9, does it appear on the screen or in the chat? If
It should appear as like a hand raise.
okay.
So FYI for folks who are on the call now, we're waiting for more people to log on. We have a pretty well attended event. And those of you who are on the phone, you can dial *9 after our presentations. We're close to the end of them, to be on stack. And stack is the order, the queue of people who are asking questions. So we will have some time for Q&A.
Okay.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi, this is Lydia Herbert. Sorry, I'm camera shy.
That's fine. There's probably lots of camera shy folks on here. I'm camera in my home shy. So we're going to get started in just 1 minute. We have a lot of folks, already 132 participants. So
Not really shy. It's just I don't have Zoom on my phone, and it was easier to just call the U.S. number to get involved.
Okay. Let me see.
great. We're going to go ahead and get started. There will be probably a lot of people joining us. We already have a pretty big crowd already. If everyone can mute their phones, that would be wonderful. Wonderful help. If you need a second to do that, I'll give you all about 30 seconds and we'll get started. All right, thank you. Thank you all for your patience. We're going to go ahead and get started now. Again, thank you for waiting, as we have a very well attended webinar tonight, and we wanted to make sure everyone was able to get on, get situated, and I hope you all are ready, because we have a very powerful and formative event in store for you this evening. All right, I heard a little bit of an echo, but I think that got fixed. We welcome every one of you to tonight's presentation and forum, Berta Cáceres, in defense of water rights. I am pleased to say that we have dozens of organizations co-sponsoring this event, and most importantly, we give a huge thanks to our hosts, the Black and Green Alliance, for putting this all together, and of course to our terrific guest speakers. My name is Tony Ndege. I'm one of the co-chairs of North Carolina Green Party, also one of tonight's co-sponsors, and it is an honor to be your moderator. We will begin with our featured speakers, followed by a brief greetings from some of the co-sponsors, and of course, a question and answer session. So we definitely hope that you can join us for the entirety of this forum. Berta Cáceres was a Honduran environmental activist, an indigenous leader, and the co-founder of the Council of Popular and Indigenous Organizations of Honduras. Many of you may know, last week marked 5 years since Berta's death. She was murdered for successfully organizing opposition to the Agua Zarca Dam. Tonight, we hope to give honor to Berta's life work, as well as to give testimony to her assassination and the deaths of many others who have fought for our humanity, our health, and our earth in Honduras and elsewhere. It is a privilege to introduce our first speaker, Nina LAKHANI. Nina is an environmental justice correspondent for The Guardian US. She has written extensively on forced migration, on the consequences of the war on drugs, on state-sponsored violence, corruption, and impunity, on gender violence, and on environmental defenders and the battle for natural resources. She is the author of Who Killed Berta Cáceres? Dams, Death Squads, and an Indigenous Defender's Battle for the Planet. This wonderful book can be found on Verso Books and elsewhere. If you purchase a hard copy, actually on Verso, you can get a free ebook. So you can download it that day, start reading it that day, and it comes very quickly in the United States. So I heavily encourage you to check it out, and you can find it on other resources as well. So without any further delay, I will turn the mic over to Nina LAKHANI. Thank you very much for being here, Nina.
Thank you, Tony, and thank you everyone who's joined tonight. It's great to see so many people here from so many different places. So yeah, I'm Nina LAKHANI. I'm a journalist, as Tony said. I'm currently based in the US, but I spent almost 7 years based in Mexico City, reporting on Central America and Mexico. I first went to Honduras in 2013, where I interviewed Berta Cáceres for the first and only time, unfortunately. And when I met her, it was just before elections were about to take place, and these were to be they were supposed to be the first free and fair elections since a 2009 coup, which had ousted the democratically elected president. And that coup was orchestrated by a network of elites, of military, political, economic, and religious elites, and what that did was really usher in an utter nightmare that has kept on unfolding and evolving in Honduras to this day. When I met Berta, she was pleading with the international observers that were there in 2013, telling them that these were not going to be free and fair elections, that social and community leaders, indigenous leaders like her, were being targeted, they were being headhunted, that their lives were at risk, that people were being killed for defending natural resources, for defending their indigenous territories, for defending their human rights. When I interviewed her, I went to her family home in La Esperanza, which is in the west of Honduras, quite near the El Salvador border. And she just, she was incredibly compelling, serious, but convincing, and just explained to me really clearly what was at stake. That she had given up her freedom in order to defend the Rio Gualcarque, the River Gualcarque, where this dam, the Agua Zarca Dam, had been sanctioned to be constructed. And by doing that, by opposing this dam, the cost to her personally and to her community and to her organization by 2013 were already tremendous. Community leaders had already been killed by that point by soldiers deployed by the government to defend, to protect, or to ensure construction of the dam and to oppose the community that was peacefully opposing it. she had been sexually harassed, she had been threatened, she had been stigmatized. And the moment I met her, she was actually on the run from the law because she was there was an arrest warrant out for her. There was an arrest warrant out for trumped up charges that had been bought by the dam company and enabled by the judicial system in Honduras. This fact, I'll stress this because I'm talking to an American audience, that not long before that, the US ambassador to Honduras at the time had publicly made a statement about the full force of the law being brought down on protesters blocking mega projects. And she had specifically been referring to the dam, to the Agua dam, and to a land conflict that was going in the north of Honduras, where peasant farmers were fighting to get back land that had been taken from them fraudulently, illegally by big African oil and African palm magnates. And when as I interviewed her, she explained to me that, she couldn't be with her children. She was on the move every night. Most of her children were out of the country because of the threats. But no matter what safety measures that she took, when they wanted to kill her, they would kill her. And, sadly, that's what came to pass. She told me that day that her name was on a military hit list, that she had been informed about that she had told the international community. Nothing happened. And that, many people had encouraged her to leave the country in order to save her own life, but she wouldn't, because the struggle to stop Agua Zarca was a emblematic struggle. It was one battle in a much bigger war. And that is a war to, we are in a fight of our lives to save the planet. And Berta Cáceres knew that. 2 years later, she won she was awarded the environmental, the so-called Nobel Prize for Environmental Defenders, the Goldman Prize, for her leadership in opposing this dam, which is an internationally financed dam, which had been sanctioned on the river without any consultation. It had been imposed on the community. And that dam, if it were to be constructed on that community, that so-called green energy would have made that community basically unviable. That Indigenous Lenca community, that without a river, the community dies. They rely on that river for food, for water, for their livestock, to wash their clothes when it doesn't rain, for medicines, for spiritual nourishment, and for fun. This is an area where there is no electricity. There is no, this is where the children go to play. And the diversion of that dam to create for energy, which would never be used for them, they were never going to benefit from that energy, would have seen that community that had lived sustainably on that land with those natural resources for many, many years, forcibly displaced, and perhaps join the hundreds of thousands of Hondurans that have been forced to flee their country in search of safety and economic opportunity since the coup in 2009. When Berta won the environmental prize, the Goldman Prize, in 2015, less than a year before her murder, I'd encourage all of you who haven't watched that speech. It's on YouTube, you can see it. And even when I think about it, I get goosebumps. Wake up, humanity, time is running out. That's how she began her speech. And, she was pleading with the world, to stop talking about the climate crisis, stop talking about the planet and environmental destruction, and take action, and to enable and support communities like her who have lived sustainable lives, have existed sustainably with the planet, like all Indigenous communities across the world have, rather than who have never looked at Mother Earth, as our natural resources, as something to exploit for profit. The Agua Zarca Dam was one of hundreds of mega projects, dams, mines, deforestation projects, cash crops like African palms, sugarcane, maize used for biofuels and processed foods, as well as tourism projects that were imposed on rural indigenous communities throughout Honduras since the coup. And it's that, and any community that dared to oppose, that dared to resist, like Berta and her community did, have been violently repressed ever since. When Berta was shot dead inside her home, inside her bedroom, while she was in her pajamas on the 2nd of March in 2016 by hired hitmen, she was not the first environmental and land defender to have been murdered. By that stage, Honduras was already the most dangerous country in the world to defend natural resources. It was already the most dangerous country in the world outside a war zone. It was already the most dangerous place in the world to practice law, one of the worst places to be a journalist, one of the most deadly places to be a woman or a girl, to be a young person, you know? So why does Berta matter so much? Why did I spend several years researching and, in really difficult, Honduras is a really difficult place to be. It's a very challenging place to be as a woman, as a journalist. It's a country that is control the power, the mainstream media, the courts, the executive branch, the Congress, the judicial system, the security forces are really ultimately controlled by a small number of people who also have a lot of invested in these mega projects like the Agua Zarca Dam. And so it's very easy for these people to wield their power and wield institutional power to make telling the truth, to reporting the truth, incredibly difficult. But why did I continue to do that? Why have I published this book? And why does Berta Cáceres matter? Why does her life and death matter? She wasn't the first, like I said, the first defender to be killed, and the bloodshed hasn't stopped since she died. She was truly a remarkable human being. When I started investigating her death for The Guardian, and then the idea came to write the book, I realized really quickly that in order to understand why she was killed, I had to understand who she was and where she came from, and to really understand that period of time, the Cold War period, the US intervention in Central America, and the consequences of which continue to be suffered by the people in these countries, which are evolved from a fight against communism into a fight against a war, a war on drugs, which has had equally disastrous consequences, which has led to the militarization of the whole region, where countries are given aid to buy bullets and to buy weapons and espionage equipment, but people cannot even find basic antibiotics or analgesics in their local hospitals, when parents have to pay for pencils and pens to send their kids to school when they should be free. A country where poverty has increased, where inequality has increased, where corruption is the operating system, where it's not about bad apples, it is about a system that was designed to maintain a status quo and take resources from the public purse, and from in a country where the US and the rest of the international community, despite the coup and what's unfolded since, has continued to prop up a president and a political party which is really a criminal enterprise masquerading as a political party. There is a criminal case that started this week in New York, in the Southern District of New York, which is the fourth drug trafficking case that identifies the current president of Honduras, Juan Orlando Hernandez, and his predecessors, so the two people that have been in power and kept in power by the US and the international community since 2009, are identified as international drug traffickers, as people that conspired and plotted and worked to bring cocaine and arms into the US that have flooded the streets and caused misery to mostly Black and brown communities across this country. But, you know, sorry, I went off on a tangent there, but, you know, Berta's life and death matters because she grew up and learned and was formed in that Cold War environment. Her family is in, you know, you have to understand her family, who on her mum's side were really like a long line of social warriors, you know, people that have fought for better, for rights, for more, for a better country, for more equality, for a just society. She fought in the El Salvadoran Civil War on side with the guerrillas, and then came back to Honduras as still a teenager, 19 or 20 she was when the war finished, determined with her husband to create an Indigenous movement, a peaceful Indigenous movement to fight for Indigenous rights. And I can't stress this enough about why that if you're interested in the environment, if you're interested in sustainability, if you're interested in natural resources, in land distribution, sustainable land use, then you have to be interested in Indigenous rights. Indigenous rights are land rights. Indigenous rights are natural resource rights to sustainable use of natural resources. These are not mutually exclusive. They are part and parcel of the same thing. So while Berta Cáceres will be remembered by many as an environmentalist, she was so much more than that. She was a dedicated human rights defender. She was a sharp political analyst who had a unique, you know, an incredible capacity to understand and explain local struggles in a regional and global context. And I try to replicate to some, as much as I could, how she did that in my book. I've tried to, in the book, to really explain and place her life and death in the wider context, the wider geopolitical, economic, military, social, and, you know, global context, because I think to understand this desperate fight that we are now in to save this planet, to save our water resources, which are running out, to save, you know, our land from just utter devastation through monocrops and through contamination. We have to think in these sort of more globally interconnected ways. We cannot be in, I don't know, in Illinois or Missouri or New York, you know, claiming to be struggling for so-called green energy and not understand that these green energy projects are being imposed on communities and will lead to the extermination of our indigenous brothers and sisters across the world. You know, we have to be smarter than that. We have to, you know, Indigenous people have the right to be consulted before any project is sanctioned on their territory. We have a responsibility to know where our tax dollars are going, where the companies and investors from our countries are investing. Not a single project in Honduras, and there's been hundreds, has there ever been the legally required consultation? Not a single one. The banks know this, the investors know this, the companies know this, and all the elected officials know this internationally and nationally, and they continue. And we have to just, as journalists, as activists, as human beings, just be more attuned and smarter about this. I think that we have to follow the money, and we have, you know, to support solar and to support renewable energy isn't enough. There are consequences to everything, okay? dams are not sustainable energy. It is a renewable energy source, absolutely, but it is not sustainable, you know, and they have dire consequences. They lead to flooding, and they lead to rivers drying up. So I think I'm going to just finish there. I urge you to, I guess, you know, if you're interested in why, I'm about to go to the southern border, to the Texas Mexico border tomorrow, and one of the things I'm sort of you know, to report on a number of stories, including access to water and food justice, but also on forced migration, because there are now you know, about 70 or 80,000 Central Americans, mainly from Honduras and Guatemala, arriving at the southern border every month. And the vast majority of them are fleeing climate crisis, extreme weather events. In Guatemala, people are starving after years of droughts and then 2 hurricanes that have completely devastated their crops. And Hondurans faced, you know, were struck by these 2 devastating hurricanes too, where more than 1 million people were left without homes and without crops and any way to make a living. The climate crisis is here. It's building on top of all the environmental hazards and damage that we have done to our planet. But people like Berta Cáceres, people like Miriam Miranda, the Garifuna leader that was, you know, who worked so closely with Berta for 24 years and continues to, you know, struggle to protect the land and territory and the natural resources of the Garifuna people, despite threats and violence and criminalization. You know, if you want, you know, take time to learn about these struggles and you know, and learn how you can show solidarity and really support them from afar through, you know, pressuring your own elected officials and pressuring, I guess, the investors and taxpayer funded banks that are investing in many of these projects. I shall leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nina. Thank you. We have a few more guest speakers here today. Our next speaker is Judy Ansel. She directed the labor education program at the University of Missouri in Kansas City for 29 years. She organized the Cross-Border Network for Justice and Solidarity, which has sponsored delegations to Mexico and Honduras to investigate the impacts of neoliberalism. Judy?
Hi. Oops, I can't share my screen. Oh, you have to, there we go. Let me start and share my screen. I just have a few slides, but I want to share them. There we go. Thank you very much. Thanks to Don Fitz and to the Missouri Greens for inviting me. And yes, I am from the Cross-Border Network for Justice and Solidarity. We're based in Kansas City, and we got organized after NAFTA when the industrial jobs started flowing out and the immigrants started flowing in. It only took one trip to the Mexican borders, Mexican side of the border, to see the connection between the two: loss of jobs and migration. We began doing people-to-people, worker-to-worker delegations to erase the idea that those $4 a day Mexican workers were stealing our jobs. Our mission is to support workers across borders and who cross borders. After the 2009 US-backed coup in Honduras, we learned firsthand how poverty breeds sweatshops, US domination breeds dictatorship, and neoliberalism rapes the resources in the land, and all of them cause massive migration. Since then, we have brought 5 other delegations to Honduras to study what's happened there. Please read our report written last year called "When Fleeing is the Only Option." The link is here on the screen, and you can just download it from our webpage, crossbordernetwork.org. I want to thank Nina LAKHANI again for writing her book and for her continued reporting on Honduras for The Guardian. She's helped enormously our work and the work of COPIN, the organization that Berta Cáceres founded. She's helped us enormously in demanding justice. We are members of the Honduras Solidarity Network. You'll hear more about that from Vicky Cervantes later on in the program. A number of the co-sponsoring groups tonight are members of HSN, the Honduras Solidarity Network. We recently marked the 5th anniversary of Berta's assassination on March 2nd. And as we anxiously await the many times postponed trial of David Castillo, the former CEO of the dam company, DESA, we echoed the call from COPEN and Berta's family to investigate, charge, try, and punish the intellectual authors of the crime behind David Castillo, namely the Atala-Zabla family. In a statement on March 2nd, COPEN called out the Honduran justice system for being deaf to the large quantity of evidence against them. They blamed pressures from political and economic groups for blocking justice and demanding that Daniel Atala-Midense, former DESA chief financial officer, his father, Jose Eduardo Atala-Zabla, and 2 uncles, Pedro and Jacobo, answer for their crimes. The assassination, they suggest, was motivated by an attempt by these investors to cover up their crimes of corruption. They call on Hondurans and on you here who defend human rights to spare no effort in demanding justice for Berta Cáceres. The reason why the Atala-Zablas have not been investigated and indicted is that the government has refused to charge the dam company, DESA, executives and owners with the crime called criminal association, which is similar to our crime of conspiracy. Without that charge, it would be much more difficult to show the network of DESA leaders' involvement in the plot to kill Berta, because the prosecutor would need to direct evidence tying each one of them to a direct act of murder. By not charging David Castillo with criminal association, the Honduran government is protecting the Atala-Zabla family, who were direct investors in DESA. Daniel Atala-Midense was chief financial officer. He reported directly to his father, Jose, who was a member of the DESA board, along with the 2 uncles. COPEN believes that CEO David actually took orders from Jose, the father of Danielle. Chats on WhatsApp confirm this. All these Atalas were deeply involved in the formation of DESA and its financing. David Castillo needed Danielle to finance their actions in Rio Blanco, where the dam was to be built. Under Pedro, Uncle Pedro was focused on security, and in the chats said he was going to use all of his political capital to ensure that Berta go to prison. In a message to the group 5 months before her assassination, Pedro said, "It's them or us," referring to Berta's organization, COPEN. Let's send a message that nothing will be easy for those SOBs. Jacobo helped with the banks. These guys were all part of a structure that was corrupt from the start, fleecing the government and the Honduran people, who, by the way, saw their electric bills skyrocket after privatization. These guys also undermined the rights of the Lenca people under the International Labor Organization's Convention 169, which requires that Indigenous people have to agree to development projects. They bribed the families to agree. They bribed certain families to agree to the dam. They monitored Berta. They used their money and influence to put Berta in jail. And it's clear from the chats that David Castillo took orders from them. It's difficult to imagine that Castillo or any of the DESA assassins would have done such an audacious act of killing Berta without the approval or instigation of the Atala-Zabla investors. Jose Atala-Zabla is cousin to billionaire Camila Atala-Faraj, owner of the Ficosa Bank, a major bank in Central America, and they're connected to the World Bank. They participate in various scams to privatize public property, inflate the price of contracts they make to deliver services, and then claim some excuse not to comply. Thus, fraudulent contracts produce huge profits for the privatized owners. They are part of the club of oligarchs who supported the 2009 coup and have feasted on the corruption permitted in the Honduran narco state. Daniel Atala claims to be just a poor cousin of Camilo. His father, Jose, says he drives an old car, but not so fast. Ficosa's Honduras and Panama branches lent Atala Zabla's company, Las Jacarandas, almost $8 million in 2014. Messages between David Castillo and Daniel Atala suggest that the money was for DESA. The story of Berta's murder and the Agua Zarca dam are a clear morality tale of what happens when a country is taken over by oligarchs backed by the military. Honduras today is what modern fascism in a poor country looks like. It's rife with violence and corruption. It's a narco state committed to fighting the drug war with all the weapons the US can supply and every ton of cocaine its leaders can sell. It's modern in that the oligarchs are completely tied into international finance capital, to the World Bank, the IMF, the regional development banks, and of course, the US, Canadian, and Israeli governments. Its ideology, if you can call it that, is neoliberalism, a fancy name for brutal corporate expropriation of the nation's abundant resources. This arrangement allows for the harvesting from Mother Earth of its rivers, its gold, its bananas and palm oil, and its water power, and no consultation with the people and with the complicity of faceless capital from Europe and North America. Its instability produces thousands of refugees dislocated from mining towns where the water is poisoned, or land struggles where the oligarchs and their hired guns give poor campesinos the choice of death or eviction. The cities are plagued by gangs like MS-13, which impose a so-called war tax, a protection racket, and no one goes to the police who are allied with the gangs. Femicide is common. There have been at least 6,427 since 2005. 95% remain in impunity. The thing is, the resistance of the people is awe-inspiring. Berta Cáceres was an extraordinary woman, and she was a leader of a movement that is smart and sophisticated and courageous and just keeps on resisting. When we were in Honduras in 2019, we visited a very poor Lenca community in the south, where the people were resisting a dam project, which threatened their livelihood. And so they burnt down and destroyed the dam. That same month, May, the teachers and the doctors were all on strike against privatization of the schools and the hospitals. There were roadblocks everywhere. People would just turn over a semi truck and block the highway, and it took hours for the authorities to clear it away. When the government instituted toll roads, another tax, people just burned down the toll booths and then kept guard to make sure they weren't rebuilt. Such resistance takes courage, and it deserves our support. And here's one way you can do it. 2 bills have just been introduced into Congress. We need your help to get your representatives and senators to sign on as co-sponsors. The House bill is the Berta Cáceres Human Rights in Honduras Act, and the Senate bill is the Honduras Human Rights Anti-Corruption Act. They are similar, but the Senate version is a little broader. And these slides give you just a very, an overview of what they contain, but they would suspend US aid to Honduran security forces and for the US to vote no on all loans from multinational development banks to Honduras until it is certified that the government of Honduras has complied with a number of conditions. The Senate bill, oops, where'd that go? I lost the Senate bill. Well, first off, ask your member of Congress to sign on as a co-sponsor. Tell them to contact Representative Hank Johnson's office, a woman named Chelsea Gray, to say they sign on as co-sponsors. The Senate bill has a few more things, which would include reinstitution of a UN anti-corruption commission. And you can see all of this and find out how to sign on your organization, how to send a letter to your congressperson or senator by going to solidaritycollective.org. Finally, if you want to do more, I'd suggest you join one of the organizations in the Honduras Solidarity Network. IFCLA in St. Louis is a member. We are a member, and there are many other co-sponsors here that are members. Eventually, my organization will be again taking delegations to educate, meet the resistance, and find the best ways to be in solidarity with the Honduran people. So you can get on our mailing list too, if you just email me at info@crossbordernetwork.org. Thank you, and I'm sorry if I ran over.
You're great. Thank you. Thank you very much, Judy. Our next speaker is Dan Hellinger. He is the Professor Emeritus of International Relations at Webster University. His most recent publications are the third edition of Comparative Politics in Latin America and Conspiracy Theories in the Age of Trump.
Okay, those are two different books, just so everybody knows. I'm going to try to share my screen at this time. Let's see what happens. That looks like it right there. Come on, slideshow, there we go. I'm very pleased and honored to be here with the other panelists, and especially with Lina LAKHANI. I think some of the things I have to say might reinforce some of the observations she makes about the need to have a very broad, global, and intersectional view of how we approach environmental issues. And Don asked me if I would talk about perhaps some other cases in Latin America, and I decided to focus on 3 in South America. I'll start out by saying that the countries I know the best, by far the one I know the best is Venezuela, where I've spent a lot of time, and Chile and Cuba. But I'm going to do my best to talk a little bit about Bolivia, Ecuador, and then in the end, I will get to Venezuela, I hope. But if I run out of time, you can find out what I have to say by going to NACLA, searching on my name and Maduro, and you'll come up with an article I've just written about what I call Maduro's Brown New Deal for Venezuela. And we'll see if I get to it. So water and extraction. So we'll start with Bolivia. And if you're watching, whether you're on a cell phone or a mobile, as they call it in other parts of the world, or you're watching it on a computer, you're probably very close to some lithium. And a lot of lithium now is found in a region of Latin America, in this lower corner of Bolivia, Chile, and Argentina. And these are salt flats. So because they're salt flats doesn't mean there isn't water. As you can see, they're near snow-capped Andean mountains. And so there's plenty of water, but it takes a lot of water to mine lithium. So in Bolivia, it's been, as I said, well, let me start again by saying that about 75% of the world's lithium deposits are in this area, in this corner of South America. Bolivia is estimated to have about 70% of the global reserves in the Salado de Uyuni. And it takes about 500,000 gallons of water to produce 1 ton of lithium. So you may know that lithium is critical, not only to production of electronic goods like your computer or your cell phone, but it's going to be crucial to the production of electronic cars, which on the one hand is potentially to reduce carbon emission, has the potential to reduce carbon emissions by 60%. And in some ways in Bolivia, there are those, and even people in the indigenous movement who live in that area, who see this as a way to bring jobs to the region that will pay about $1,000 per month. But as I mentioned a moment ago, the Argentine solar, which is one that's already in function on a high level, it absorbs about 65% of the water use in that region per day. Now, when Evo Morales was president, he moved ahead to try to produce batteries. He had a contract with a German company to exploit or extract the lithium But part of the agreement was that the German company was to produce a battery factory in the region. Now, this has, of course, a lot of environmental consequences. One thing that, why did Morales want to do this? Largely because he saw it as a way to break the cycle whereby Latin America exports raw materials and imports finished goods. So in this way, he thought we get technology. You can see that this is what is a very traditional developmentalist kind of approach to development. So you probably all know that Morales was overthrown in a coup, but more recently, his one of the leaders of other leaders of the MAS party, Luis Arce, has been elected president to come, and he's pledged basically to the same problem, to the same policy. Now, the thing I want to bring up here that we'll see in the other two cases as well is that this has created some divisions. I don't know. I doubt that Central Americans have seen the same degree of divisions as some of the Andean countries have had over issues regarding extractionism and export industries. Lena would know better than I do. But on the one hand, you have this idea born in the Andean countries with their large indigenous populations of shifting to development around the idea of buen vivir, the good life, meaning moving away from consumerism. It doesn't mean necessarily living the simple life without technology, but it does mean a radical change in the way in which we all live our lives, which is something that I think this particular group would heartily endorse. The other way is through development, and this is where a lot of the traditional left in Latin America, I wouldn't even say traditional left, it's more the new left, the leaders of the pink tide, people like Hugo Chavez, like Rafael Correa in Ecuador, and even Evo Morales, despite the fact that he rose to power out of an indigenous movement. As I indicated a moment ago, a lot of his policies were evolved towards the idea that, well, we have to lift people out of poverty and develop the country. And to do this, we need extractive industries. So this has opened an important debate in the region. So I'm shifting to Ecuador now. This is the highest waterfall in Ecuador. This is how it looked on February 1st, 2020. It's a waterfall along the Coco River in the Cayambe Coco Park, in just a little bit east of the capital city of Quito. If you look at the image on the top, this is that same shot today. This is 2 years later, what it looks like. And you'll notice there's something missing, a waterfall. And that's because on February 2nd, the waterfall gave way. A dam which had been redirecting water for hydroelectric purposes, actually over a period of time kind of eroded the base of the water of the waterfall until it finally gave way and was literally washed away. So this was not a dam. This was the consequence of a dam creating such hydro power that it actually wiped out a natural wonder in Ecuador. Along with wiping out the natural wonder, it threatened the livelihoods of people along the Napo River Valley. And it also created problems. It broke 2 oil pipelines. So this contaminated water for many downstream populations as it flowed through the Amazon region in Peru. One expert believes that the waterfalls collapsed and were due to the heavy erosion, and heavy erosion were linked to the Coca-Cola, that should be cola, not Kodo, Sinclair hydroelectric plant, which was built and financed by Chinese companies. So President Correa, who was the president of Ecuador in 2007 to 2017, was a close ally of the other pink tide leaders in the region, including, again, Chavez, Evo Morales, Lula in Brazil, and other leftist leaders. But a crucial ally of his was Pachakutik, an indigenous movement. And it really was the key to his victory. Pachakutik had been fighting for more indigenous control over access to natural resources and more indigenous rights in general in Ecuador. Like Morales, Correa, however, continued developing extractive industries. And a lot of times these involved water rights with local communities. And of course, there were laws, just like in Honduras, for community consultation, but the Pachakutik began to distance itself from Correa, charging that these laws for community consultation were either being evaded or just not really enforced at all. Nonetheless, Correa was, I guess, very successful in conventional terms in producing a growing GDP, like Chavez in Venezuela, like Morales in Bolivia. A lot of the benefits from that were channeled towards the lower part, the poorer parts of the population, which kind of reinforced a lot of support and earned the enmity of the more traditional political elites in the country. Correa's vice president, Lenin Moreno, reversed these policies when he came into office. But his neoliberal reforms were deeply unpopular. And once again, Pachakutik mobilized and literally drove Lenin Moreno from power. So recently there was an election in Ecuador, and these were the first round results. There were three major candidates. In the orange is Andrés Arauz. He's a Correa protege. So he's very much part of the political party and movement that backed Correa during his presidency. The pink is where Pachakutik's candidate, Yaku Perez, an indigenous leader, got the most votes. And the blue, and you see only one area, but it's the most populous area, is the Quito area. And that's where Guillermo Lasso, a conservative neoliberal, carried the most votes.
And you have one more minute. I'm sorry.
Okay, Andrés Arauz won, but not enough, and he's currently in a runoff with Lasso. The interesting thing is that Perez said in his campaign he might actually support Lasso rather than Arauz. So once again, we have Buen Vivir versus development. So I'm just going to go ahead. This is what's happened to Venezuela's oil production. And there are a lot of reasons for it. But around this time, part of it has to do with Chavez borrowing against future production for Chinese loans, depleting the state oil reserves, and failing to invest in the state company's productive capacity. So yeah, there's some blame to go around for this fall off in production. But then in 2015, the United States began imposing sanctions, and they've ratcheted it up, and they've gotten to the point where the UN Rapporteur on Human Rights has said that they're having enormous impact over all categories of human rights, including rights to life, food, health, and development. So I'm going to skip ahead to the last slide. I was going to show you where it is and just conclude by saying that thinking about extraction and versus more conventional kind of raising capital for development to alleviate poverty and develop jobs along traditional lines, this extractive pattern is rooted in 500 years of colonialism and neocolonialism. It's very difficult to uproot. Environmental and indigenous social movements, at least in South America, there are some that have urged a full break from extractivism, but the problem is, can and should the break be immediate given the realities of poverty and inequality in the region? And finally, these have provoked divisions within the left in these countries about whether or not to make this transition, when I said manifest, I'm not sure why I said that, but how quickly to move on this transition and how pragmatic to be in implementing it, especially in the Andean region. So I'll stop there and thank you.
Thank you, Dan. And if any of our speakers have any unfinished thoughts that you haven't been able to get to, we'll have a Q&A, and you can certainly, I'm sure some of those questions will be revisited during the Q&A. Our next speaker is Don Fitz, and he was the 2016 candidate of the Missouri Green Party for governor. He is on the editorial board of Green Social Thought. His book on Cuban healthcare, The Ongoing Revolution was published in 2020. Don?
Okay, can you hear me? I had to unmute. Okay, Tony, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, now I'm going to look at dams around the world. There's several points I want to make, but 2 points I just want to repeat that Nina pointed out. One is that dams undermine indigenous culture. We see that especially in Honduras. We can also see it in Brazil, where the Belo Monte Dam was opposed by a whole coalition of indigenous people who, and it basically wrecked their environment. That was put forward a long time ago, but it was brought back by Lula da Silva, and then it was endorsed dramatically by Dilma Rousseff. So we can see that progressives often support these neoliberal projects. The second point, the other point that Nina made was that conflicts over dams often result in arrest and killing people. And it's not just there. A lot of such violence has been recorded in Burma, China, Colombia, Ethiopia, Guatemala, and Sudan. The greatest number of indigenous people massacred was when 440 were killed to make a way for Guatemala's dam in 1982. Okay, those are the points that we've already heard. I'm going to bring up 10 other points. One is that the first is that dams destroy species and disrupt ecosystems. This is probably the best known aspect of dams. They cause more loss of biodiversity than exists on land. And what people know most about is that they interrupt fish migrations, but they also disrupt microorganisms, reptiles, amphibians, insects, and even birds. So dams are extremely destructive. We don't even know how they affect undiscovered species, but they're extremely destructive to biodiversity. Probably the least known factor of dams is that they produce carbon dioxide. Dams are a great producer of greenhouse gases, so to propose them as a clean alternative to fossil fuels is actually ridiculous. Dams remove about 200 million tons from the atmosphere, rivers remove CO2 from the atmosphere, and dams disrupt that process because they disrupt river systems. Additionally, dams take an enormous amount of concrete and steel to build, and that concrete and that steel takes tremendous amounts of heat and carbon dioxide to produce. And generally, you can say that 1 ton of cement requires the creation of 1 ton of carbon dioxide. And you measure the amount of cement that dams need in terms of the millions of tons. A third point about dams is that they drive people from their homes. The Brazilian dam of Belo Monte, the government said it only drove 16,000 people from their home. It's actually closer to 40,000. Mexico has expanded dams from 1936 to 2006, and that forced the removal of 185,000 people. And the estimates are that 80 million people have been driven from their homes globally as a result of dams, which brings me to my fourth point, and that is dams affect far more people than they displace. While 80 million have been driven from their homes, at least around 800 million have had their lives disrupted by dams. It disrupts the way that people make a living, as it disrupts the water resources, as it reduces fish, and it poisons the water. Also, because of the alternation in water flow, dams are associated with diseases such as malaria, filariasis, yellow fever, dengue, and schistosomiasis. And so they're very disruptive. Fifth point is that dams can increase the likelihood of wars between countries. There are at least 145 countries have rivers that flow from one country to another. And Turkey especially has a mania for building dams, and Turkey's dams have reduced the water flow to Syria by 40% and reduced water flow to Iraq by 80%. Israel takes 87% of West Bank aquifers and leaves the Palestinians 13%. And now by 2030, it's estimated that 4 out of 10 people in the world will not have access to water. The sixth point I want to make is that dams increase the gap between rich and poor. The rich always tell people dams are going to bring wealth to everybody. And by the time you figure out that poor people are paying for the dams and the rich people are benefiting from it, the politicians who said that are out of office. And there's something else which is occupying people's minds. Seventh point is that dams cost much more than the developers promised. The average overrun is 96% overrun. One of the reasons is that people who estimate the cost of a dam virtually never do not take into account maintenance of the dam usually. And as a result, over 1,000 dams in the US have been taken down. And at the same time that the US is vigorously advocating more dams to be built throughout the world. The most costly expense for dams is dam breaks. That brings me up to my eighth point is the breakage of dams. If you wanted to write about all the dams that are broken in the world, you would have to write an encyclopedia to do it. Like I said, it produces huge amounts of carbon dioxide to manufacture steel and concrete. These are not eternal. These do not last forever. All of them eventually rot and break, and the earth and the rocks are eventually washed away. Like I said, there's thousands and thousands of dam breaks. I'm just going to talk about one, and that's the 1975 Banqiao Dam collapse in China. It was part of the Harness the River campaign that was across China, started in the 1950s. And by the 1970s, thousands of other dams had been built across China, even though scientists warned them that these projects were raising the water levels too high. So let's see. Nevertheless, the government continued to build dams. And on August the 5th, 1975, a typhoon collided with a cold front over Henan and dropped the same amount of more water in one day than usually comes to that area in 1 year. And the collapse of the Banqiao Dam unleashed a 50-kilometer-per-hour tidal wave. Now, since China had been building so many dams, as the tidal wave went down the river, it knocked out one dam that knocked out another dam that knocked out another dam. A total of 62 dams were destroyed. Entire villages were washed away within minutes. And during the 6 hours of the rush of the water from the reservoir, 26,000 people died. They were lucky because they died quickly. The unlucky ones were 5 times as likely. There was a total of 171,000 people who died in that series of dam collapses. The greatest tragedy is that China did not learn too much from that and continued to build more dams. As one of their politicians said, we must proceed. The resources here are too good. Not to develop them is not an option. And so the ninth point that I want to bring up is that the recklessness of dam production is increasing. It's not decreasing. As I just mentioned, in China, there are a series of too many dams built in one place. What's happening in India now is there's a mania to build dams on the Himalayas in earthquake zones. And so India has had a series of dam collapses where people die. In addition, there are more and more toxic facilities located on rivers. So when there's a dam collapse, there's more and more poisons that are washed down to the people downstream. When people figure out, and I hope it's soon, that fossil fuels are a bad idea, the things that are in line to take their place are not solar and wind. Those are the third things down the line. But the next things to take their line are nuclear power and dams. And like in 2018, 85% of global energy was supplied by fossil fuels, 7% by hydropower, 4% by nuclear power, and 4% for both solar and wind power. So we're in a bad situation. So what my last point is that it's possible to stop the insanity of dam building. More than 500 organizations from 85 countries have called on their governments to stop large hydropower projects and especially stop using them as claiming that this is a way to reduce the problems of climate change. And there is an option besides having more dams, more solar arrays, and more wind farms and more nuclear power. And the other option is called energy conservation. It would include using vastly less energy by having compact by having compact communities that require less transportation, smaller home space that requires less heating and cooling, less production of energy absorbing gadgets, which we all know are designed to fall apart or go out of style, such as the computer that you're using right now. And above all, a shorter work week where we manufacture fewer products, but we manufacture better projects that are designed like our great grandparents saw, of products designed to last for years and decades and not for months before they fall apart. Thank you.
That's wonderful. Thank you. So we are going to move on, and we're going to hear some very brief greetings from several of our co-sponsors. If you don't mind, I ask that you keep it. I know we have scheduled about 2 minutes per speaker. If you can keep it closer to 1 minute, that'd be great, so we can get to our question and answer session. But we will begin with an announcement from Barbara Cicerio.
Oh, okay. I'm announcing our next Black and Green program coming up on April the 8th. There's a group of us that have formed a No Spray group here in St. Louis. Many of the same folks who worked for many years marched against Monsanto, and now Monsanto is bare. The title of the program is Removing Pesticides from Our Public Spaces. Parks, playgrounds, schoolyards, roadways, and other public areas are routinely sprayed with a variety of pesticides used to control insects and undesired plants. So over the years, evidence is mounted showing that these pesticides are not only damaging to the environment, but also affect human health. The disproportionate use of pesticides in communities with the majority of African American and low-income residents, and the unintended consequences to non-targeted plants and animals are of great concern. In this spirit, the Gateway Green Alliance is going to be hosting a Zoom webinar to explore the health concerns associated with the use of pesticides, a lot of glyphosate, and alternatives to pesticides used, as well as looking at what other communities have done to reduce the use of pesticides in their public area. So we've got some great speakers. Warren Porter is going to be speaking. He's a toxicologist out of the University of Wisconsin. He's going to talk about health effects. The Black Institute, Brooklyn, New York, is going to present evidence of the overuse of pesticides in communities of color. Kent Rowe, co-chair of the Kansas Green Party, is going to offer some alternatives to pesticide use. M. Ward from the Green Party of Albuquerque is going to share what's been done in Albuquerque to reduce the use of pesticides. And our Dan Romano here in St. Louis with No Spray and the Missouri Green Party is going to talk about efforts in St. Louis to reduce the use of pesticides and issues with sunshine requests. So we're really focusing on reducing or ending the use of spraying of pesticides in public areas, public parks especially. So I think it'll be a great program coming up April the 8th. It'll be another Zoom, of course. Thank you.
Great. And we're going to hear some brief greetings from some of our co-sponsors. We're going to begin with the African People's Socialist Party. Tichawa Masimba, are you here? Okay. If Tichawa is here, if you can join in, we're going to continue on to our next scheduled speaker. We're going to be going down alphabetically, so by organization. So our next organization is Black Alliance for Peace. Is Asantua here?
Oh, all right. Hi, can you hear me? Can you
How
see
you doing?
me? Hey, how are you? All right. Good evening, comrades. My name is Asantua Nkrumah Toure. I live in Philadelphia. I'm a member of Black Alliance for Peace. I'm also a member of the Green Party of Philadelphia. I want to thank you all for this invitation to this event. During this International Women's Month, we honor the courageous example of our sister, our comrade, Berta Cáceres, environmentalist and Indigenous leader. We pay tribute to her by continuing to organize and do the work we each do in our respective parts of the world. To Berta, to her family and comrades, to the people of Honduras, we say thank you, thank you, thank you. Our solidarity with you knows no borders. Our solidarity is based on love for justice, a love for humanity, and a love for all creation. So again, thank you all, my comrades, and thank you all for inviting me here. Thank you.
Great. And next we have Climate Convergence of Metro Vancouver, Canada.
Hi, it's Allison Bodine here, speaking to you from the unceded territories of the Musqueam, Tsleil-Waututh, and Salish nations here in British Columbia, Canada. Thank you very much to Don Fitz for the invitation to participate in this important webinar. It is an honor to be with you all here tonight in commemoration of Berta Cáceres and of our international climate justice struggle. Climate Convergence is a grassroots organization here in British Columbia that is involved in organizing against the Site C Dam, the TMX or Trans Mountain Pipeline, and the CGL pipeline at Wet'suwet'en, which many of you probably heard about given the intense struggle there a year ago, as well as ongoing educational events, banner actions, and a large-scale postering campaign, which have been important actions during the COVID-19 pandemic. The devastating destruction of the environment by capitalism has shown us clearly that climate change will impact everyone around the world. And so our movement to stop climate change must also be international. No one country, no one group will be able to solve the climate crisis by itself. By its nature, the struggle for a sustainable world requires international cooperation, solidarity, and more importantly, unity across borders to become a powerful and effective force. Let's work together to build a united and stronger international climate justice movement. Thank you very much. Berta, presente.
Right on. Our next speaker will be Teresa Wilke with Green Party of Kansas. Teresa?
Thank you very much, Tony. So there is a Green Party in Kansas. We've been in existence. We've been active since about 1989. I want to thank the Missouri Green Party for putting on this stellar presentation, and Kansas Green Party gives solidarity with everything we've heard thus far. So everyone, we meet every 2 weeks. Our next meeting is March 14th at 1 o'clock. And you can access the link or notify us that you would like to come on our Facebook page, Kansas Green Party. We have a website page that you can contact us. That's kansasgreenparty.org. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Teresa. Our next co-sponsor is Green Social Thought, Stan Cox.
Hi, everybody. Many thanks to everyone we've heard tonight and to Berta Cáceres. We've all seen the academic studies from Stanford and other places that purport to show that the excessive industrial energy production that the world is producing today, which is going primarily to the affluent minority and not to the majority of humanity, that it can be replicated solely with so-called renewable energy, primarily wind, solar, and either hydroelectric or biomass power. Now, because wind and solar alone are intermittent, the supply is unpredictable and intermittent depending on whether the sun is out or the wind is blowing. The so-called base load has to be supplied by something else. That's why there's this huge rush to build hydroelectric power all over the world. And these studies that purport to show that we can live the same life we're living now, no matter how unjust, can be supplied solely from these sources of energy depend on either building multiple of the number of dams we have today, or by producing huge amounts of biomass for energy, both of which are going to have their biggest impact on people who live on the land, disproportionately indigenous people. This clearly is not the kind of world we want. So the cornucopian energy visions are based on continued exploitation of both the earth and the people who live on the earth. And so that's why we're so glad to see this event tonight.
Thank you, Stan. Our next speaker is Vicky Cervantes with Honduras Solidarity Network.
Hi, and thanks to the organizers and all the presenters. It's been really, really great. Honduras Solidarity Network, I'm going to share the contact information again. If anyone is interested in getting on our informational email list, you can just email the Honduras Solidarity Network. If your organizations are interested in more information and maybe working with us on some of the projects that Judy mentioned, the Berta Cáceres case, support for the Indigenous and the Black communities in Honduras, support for all of the people's movements in Honduras, urgent actions, and working to change US policy, please contact us. We're very active on Twitter and on Facebook, so I'll share that information as well. And as the saying goes, Berta didn't die, Berta didn't die, Berta multiplied. I am Berta. We're all Berta. Thank you so much.
Solidarity. IFCO Pastors for Peace. Gail Walker.
Hello, thank you. I want to thank the organizers of this really important event. Thank you, Vicky. Berta no se murió. Que linda. It's really important to remember our dear sister, Berta Cáceres. And I'm just honored to be here. IFCO's honored to be here as one of the co-sponsors. For many years, IFCO worked in solidarity and has continued to do so with our friends and neighbors in Central America, beginning with the French shipment caravans to Nicaragua and expanding elsewhere in the region, including in Honduras. In the 1980s, we engaged in action education campaigns to draw attention to the plight of the Honduran people, visiting different indigenous communities in solidarity with the work of groups like Ofrane, Compa, Copin, which was led by our dear sister Berta Cáceres and was dedicated to the defense of the environment in the Intubaca and the defense of the Lenca people. Still, the attacks on the righteous activists in the region continue. And in fact, this July will mark 1 year since the kidnapping and disappearance of the 5 Garifuna activists from their homes in the community of Triunfo de la Cruz. We will and must continue to struggle to bring them home alive. These brave young activists deserve the support of the solidarity community, and their families and the community have not given up, and neither should we. We cannot stand by while these Afro-Honduran Garifuna leaders are victimized and criminalized and persecuted. It is not too late to reach out to your elected officials to demand that the US government hold the Honduran government accountable. I'll just end by saying that IFCO joins many others, including the Honduran Solidarity Network, in urging support for the House and Senate bills calling for human rights and anti-corruption in Honduras. The spirit of Berta Cáceres lives on. Viva Berta.
Right on. Interfaith Committee on Latin America. Ellen Siegemeier.
Hi, good evening. Thank you for the invitation to join, and thanks for the presenters. It was very informative tonight. My name is Ellen Siegemeier. I'm a volunteer and board member of the St. Louis Interfaith Committee on Latin America, or better known as IFCLA. Like many of the co-sponsors of this event, IFCLA is a grassroots organization whose founding members recognized a need to advocate for change regarding US policies toward Latin America and to stand in solidarity with immigrants and activists seeking justice for human rights abuses here and in Latin America. For nearly 40 years, IFCLA has provided a space for collaboration among people of faith and goodwill in the St. Louis region. Berta Cáceres' life exemplified the hard work done on a daily basis by activists fighting for their communities all over the world. Her tireless pursuit of justice for her community that cost her her life has served to amplify all voices impacted by the destructive nature of extractive industries, especially in Honduras and other Central American countries. The pursuit of justice for Berta is paramount to avoid further persecution and murder of those now continuing her struggle. IFCLA is also a member of organization of the Honduras Solidarity Network, and with HSN, we will continue to push our federal legislators to become co-sponsors of the Berta Cáceres Act, the Honduras Human Rights and Anti-Corruption Bill, and any other future piece of legislation that seeks justice and protection for Hondurans struggling to retain their land and natural resources. Thanks.
Excellent. Manny Pintado with Latinx Caucus for the Green Party, US. Manny, you here?
Yeah, comrades, good evening. And
Right
thank
on.
you, Dan Fitz, for inviting me to this very special webinar. Wow, it wasn't just about Berta Cáceres, it's about decolonization and the imperialists that we unfortunately live inside this. Okay, first of all, I want to say thank you to the Missouri Green Party. And listen, 2022 is coming up, and there's a person that we really need to get rid of, Josh Hawley. Please, please get a person to go and take the Green Party, and finally we can make something, and we can finally get rid of Josh Hawley. He is the worst person, and he's dangerous. So I just want to say that I represent the Latinx caucus for the Green Party and also the Pioneer Valley Green Rebel Party of Massachusetts. And along with my sister, Jamie Waring, in March 24, 2016, we did a special presentation for Berta Cáceres, our sister from Honduras, who was killed cowardly by 8 militias, but also who were also involved, DESA, which is a company that has roots in the United States. And my question is, why hasn't any of those people from the United States been tried for this murder? It's time that these people always, between 2010 and 2014, more than 125 defenders of the water and activists in Honduras were killed and used with United States tax dollars that we, okay, all of us are, give, and they use that for the coups. So I think it's time for, for us to start working real hard to start getting all these people covered. And I'm saying even the big hunches like the CIA and NSA. And thank you everybody for for doing this. Like my sister Paki Williams from Go Pink, who also helped organize this. She said Berta Cáceres no murió, ella se representó, which is Berta Cáceres has not died. She is still representing, and we here are part of that. And I'm so glad that we can bring this to many people, and they can see how the empire is destroying our planet. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Reports on our digital footprint, Katie Singer. Katie Singer?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Great. I am really honored to be here. I have questions. The first one that I think we need to ask is, what will the electricity power? So what was that dam designed to power? What are all of these systems designed to power? Is it smelting or refining of ores? Is it Bitcoin, which is a major consumer? We need to reconsider terms like green and renewable. Every product's energy use, greenhouse gas emissions, extractions, toxic waste, worker hazards need to be looked at from cradle to cradle. If you look at a laptop's energy use from cradle to cradle, 81% will be used before the end user turns it on for the first time. One electric vehicle can have 100 computers. So in other words, it is not a zero emitter. It is not green. It is not clean. Manufacturing it ravages the earth. This is also true for manufacturing solar panels and wind turbines. We need to include what goes into designing every product we manufacture: the ores extracted and smelted, the transportation of raw materials between stations, the chemicals manufactured, the water used for washing ores. We need to recognize what goes into manufacturing solar panels and wind turbines and the computers used for conferences like this one. If we look from cradle to cradle, there is no such thing as renewable power. There is no such thing as green power. Solar panels are hazardous waste. They do not biodegrade. Wind turbines do not biodegrade. One blade can weigh 22,000 pounds. We need to talk about how to live without cars, how to live with much more limited media use. And most importantly, we need to be open to redefining what renewable really means. We need to ask if any product or power system is within our ecological means. Thank you.
Thank you, Katie. Just a couple more intros from Task Force on the Americas, Diana Bone. Diana Bone. Diana? Okay, we're gonna go ahead and move on. Diana, if you're here, you just couldn't get on, you'll have time during our Q&A to give an introduction. Universal African Peoples Organization, Zaki Baruti.
Yes, excuse me. Good evening. My name is Zaki Baruti. I'm President General of the Universal African Peoples Organization. First, let me just say I totally commend the panelists. The information provided this evening was very awesome. As they were speaking, I was they took me back to my youth when I used to look at Dracula movies, where Dracula was a bloodsucker. And what we're dealing with in terms of today's reality, the bloodsuckers that represent imperialism, capitalism, militarism, racism. And just as in the movie when they destroyed Dracula by putting a stake in his heart, we actually need to have a stake in the heart of those evils that I just cited. Also, as they were mentioning about the coup in Honduras in 2009, it took me back to the many coups that this country has sponsored over the years. And just to cite a couple, just reminded me of the coup in Iran in 1952, where they overthrew the elected president there. The coup that took place in Austin Aristide in Haiti. The coup that ousted Maurice Bishop in Grenada. The murder and killing of Lumumba. The killing of Gaddafi. The coup that led to Morales in Bolivia. And we could go on and on and on. So that just speaks to what we, those of us who say we're progressives and revolutionaries, the task that's on us as we go further into the 21st century. And that is the destruction of those evils that I just mentioned, and re-emphasizing those evils is imperialism, capitalism, militarism, and racism. So I say all power to the people, and let's have liberation in our lifetime. Peace. And by the way, anybody who may want to have find out information about our organization, our website is www.uapo.org. Thank you.
All power to the people. Veterans for Peace, Johnny Sims. Johnny, are you here?
I'm here.
Right
Can you hear
on.
me?
Yeah, yes, we can.
Hi, everybody. Johnny Sims, Veterans for Peace, Chapter 61 out of St. Louis. I want to thank all the presenters tonight for your passion and your hard work and all the information. It really changed me tonight. I believe I have a more nuanced and negative view of dams at the very least, and I've learned a new word too, extractivism. And I'd like to pass on all those lessons I learned tonight to Veterans for Peace. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And we're going to get started on our Q&A. I just wanted to give just a very brief introduction to North Carolina Green Party. That's who I'm representing. We're really proud to be a co-sponsor. We've worked recently on national solidarity actions with Bessemer, Alabama Amazon warehouse workers, also called BAMazon. We will be collaborating on some Earth Day to May Day actions, and I'm going to be posting some of that information in the chat, but basically you can, I don't know why that's upside down, but anyhow, Earth Day, you can text Earth Day to 833-664-0565. And I just wanted to let you know that North Carolina Green Party is a strongly eco-socialist party. And by eco-socialist, I mean that we are fighting for a true system change that both advances humanity and our planet. And while we can't speak for Berta, we think that this is what she was fighting for too. And we have to take a look at moving beyond the system of ruthless, endless competition, as Zaki and some of our other speakers spoke about. And why is this? Because whether we like it or not, we are all in this planet together, and we will perish together if we do not end the system. Hasta la victoria. All right, so we're gonna, we do have a couple of questions that some of our co-sponsors asked, but we are gonna take about 3 questions, and then from then, maybe we'll have time for about 4 more questions. I know we're going a little bit over time, so if all of our speakers can bear with us and at least most of you can stay on, we'd greatly appreciate it. But we definitely want to hear from some of our folks who've heard all of these wonderful presentations and probably have some questions. So does anyone have any questions? You can press stack. Sorry, you can put stack into the chat. And does anyone know how to find chat? So if you go to chat, you go to the chat function down, you might have to look at the 3 dots if you are on a mobile phone. No one with no questions? Okay, Nina has to leave in 10 minutes. So, Nina, can you answer some of the questions that some of our co-sponsors had? Why have there been no charges?
Charges against, in particular, who? Sorry.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Why have there been no charge? Who? There has been people. Some people have been charged. What was the specific question?
One of our co-sponsors said, why have there not been anyone, I guess.
Okay, I'll just say.
Latinx caucus person.
So in 2018, 7 men were convicted of their role in the murder. And these were a combination of the hired hitmen who were paid, poor young, impoverished young Hondurans paid, pretty small amounts of money to kill this amazing woman. And some of the middlemen, I would say, so some of those who coordinated with and helped with the logistics and helped plan the murder. And those middlemen included 2 former US trained officers, Honduran, but former trained at the School of Americas. One was an active major, highly decorated, had served alongside the coalition in Iraq and as a UN peacekeeper. And at the time of the murder had also been under investigation for drug trafficking and kidnap. And also the sort of 7 included 2 people linked to the dam company. David Castillo, who Judy mentioned, who is the president of the dam company, another US trained former military officer. He was trained at West Point Academy, an intelligence officer who used this intelligence training to monitor and to Berta over a long period of time, to get close to Berta over a long period of time before her murder was planned. He will face trial. His trial is scheduled to start next month. He's the only one accused so far of masterminding the crime. As Judy laid out in a lot of detail, there have been many calls, and evidence would certainly suggest that others in the dam company, include members of one of the most powerful families in Honduras, should at least be investigated for their role in not just the murder. The point is that I guess that the murder, I would say, and this I lay out in my book, was the grand finale of a campaign of terror using a whole range of counterinsurgency tactics against Berta and the community and organization to try and neutralize them, to either jail, to threaten, to intimidate, to bribe. And the murder really was the grand finale in all of that. And for all those things that happened, the false criminal charges, the harassment, the other killings, there were many institutions and officials that enabled, either through acts or through omissions, for those things to occur. And so there are many layers of responsibility in this crime. And the trial in 2008 brought partial justice, but it was certainly the lower, the people at the lower end of the food chain that have been convicted so far.
Thank you very much. We do have a stack question from Wayne Turner.
Tony.
And one more question. What is the energy consumption of the US military? Go ahead and ask your question, Wayne.
Hi, my question, I guess, is addressed to the people who have identified the problems with renewable energy in the sense that their life cycle from cradle to grave is almost certainly prohibitive of their classification as a renewable energy source. I'm very interested in finding, in reading studies, engineering works, and so forth that enumerate these problems. And I was wondering if any of the speakers are aware of a source of a collection of this kind of information. Over.
This is Katie Singer. I can, if you go to go to ourweb.tech, OURWEB.TECH/letters/. I've been writing about this in letters that are being published in Europe. And if you fill out the contact form, you can contact me. Basically, I'm trying to come up with as much references as possible. There's a lot of good work being done in France, where, for example, there are engineers who figured out that if everyone in France replaced their gas guzzling car with electric vehicles, the country would double its electricity demand. And the only way to do that with minimal greenhouse gas emissions would be to go to nuclear power. I think they would have to build like a half dozen new nuclear power plants. So the fact is that it's so complex what we're looking at. And yeah, go to ourweb.tech/letters/.
I would just add to that there are no easy answers to this, right?
Yes.
It's complicated. But I think obviously words matter, and hydroelectric dams are renewable, but they're not sustainable, and that's a key difference, and I think that so I think terminology is important to understand. And when you look at things like solar, there are many ways to do solar. You can have massive solar farms that require destruction or flattening of otherwise sort of fertile lands, or mountains or whatever, or you can and are built sort of really with an intention of profit, or you can look at solar panels as a much more sort of through a climate justice and an environmental justice and racial justice lens, when you're talking about actually energy autonomy and economic autonomy. So I think that there, it's not yes or no, it's not black and white. I think there is so much sort of certainly, for example, on a Navajo Nation right now, where there are really great grassroots groups working towards and trying to work towards a sort of just transition, an energy just transition, with sort of community-led small solar solar power sort of entities are coming up against sort of big corps, like using the same extractive mentality. I think the point is that I wouldn't say all dams should be banned. It's about people having the right to self-determination and to decide what their development priorities are. And also, like somebody else mentioned, where does this energy go? What is it used for? If communities are being forcibly displaced to construct a dam, and then the energy is then being used to power a mine, that is a very different scenario to energy being used in a community where they haven't had, where that's what they want and they don't have it. So I think there is a lot of sort of there's a lot of there's spectrums, there's grey areas, and I think that it's sort of important to, there's no easy answers to this, but what the extractive model and the imposition model, which is basically colonialism, right, is clearly unsustainable. We are, the planet cannot take any more of that.
Can I jump in and ask a question to Nina?
Yeah.
I understand that the administration is talking about a package of like $3 billion in economic aid to Central America, which they think is going to slow migration somehow. You're shaking your head, and I think I agree with you, but I thought it might be important to point out that it's likely to be the same model of export and supporting things. But so there's that on my agenda. And the other thing I was wondering is that people have talked a lot about imperialism and intersections with race, but no one's brought up patriarchy and particularly femicide. And I think there's a pretty strong connection between the things that you've spoken about tonight in Honduras and the problem and the way in which women are disproportionately victimized. That there's a connection between femicide and what's happened to Berta. Is that right?
I mean, yes. I mean, I think, Berta Cáceres was murdered for her opposition to this extractive model. It was a clear message, direct message to others, that do not mess with our sort of economic projects. But she was also undoubtedly killed for being a woman and an Indigenous woman. There were, we can see this through some of the phone evidence that, that had been uncovered during the trial, that they, you know, the racism, you know, in some of the sort of communications, but they, you know, that people, analysts and people close to her in Honduras, as soon as I got there and started talking to them, were describing this as a misogynist femicide, you know, that she was killed for being a woman who dared stand up to patriarchy, dare stand up to capitalism. And I think that certainly while her family and others are absolutely pushing for that, you know, for this really to be considered as much of a hate crime as anything else, the state prosecution is not willing to consider that at all. I mean, Honduras is one of the most dangerous, Latin America is the most dangerous region in the world to be a woman and a girl. And, you know, I think just one thing, you know, to remember that in some of the reporting that I've done over the years, while we hear a lot about gang violence, and that's right, the main reason that women flee their homes and resist by leaving their countries is domestic violence. By far, that is, you know, that is the main cause for women, you know, risking and, you know, that leaving their homes for another country. And during the Trump administration, that was taken away as a claim for asylum, which had, you know, been in place, for, you know, through a court precedent a few years ago. So, yeah, absolutely. And I think also just Berta was, you know, very clear. Berta was anti-capitalist, anti-racist, and anti-patriarchy, you know, all those things. You can't be one without the other, really, truly, you know, and that she was always very clear that the way capitalism and the way the neoliberal sort of, you know, model and affects and impacts and is felt by women and girls is really different. Women and children, I would say, is really distinct. Even if you think about water and that river, it falls on the women in that community to make sure that there is enough water for cooking, for drinking, to wash clothes. That is a burden that women carry, you know, and actually you see this across struggles around Latin America and across the world, that women, especially Indigenous women, are often at the forefront of these struggles because their relationship with natural resources, you know, water and land is the same, but is also different. It is distinct, and I think the burden falls on them to provide for their families, and providing for their families is so tied into access to, you know, sustainable access to natural resources.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Okay.
I'd like to add something to that. And I said in my talk that over 6,000 women have been killed in femicides in Honduras since 2005. And I think it's also really important to point out that many of the leaders of the resistance are women. I mean, not just Berta Cáceres, but Miriam Miranda, the leader of Ofrene, the Garifuna organization, is one of the most powerful women I've ever met. And, you know, they just keep on going and, you know, facing incredible amounts of repression and murder in their communities. But, you know, women are clearly targeted by the authorities, by the police and the military, and by the gangs in Honduras. There was just a case that made the newspapers here of a young woman who was picked up, I think, for a curfew violation, and murdered in the police station where she was being held by what's apparently a rogue cop who everybody just lets keep going. And so the tolerance of femicide is something that's really endemic in the structure of the Honduran government.
Hi, this is Don. I would like to jump in for a second. I think I'd like to get back to the issue that a person brought up a little bit before about documenting the dangers of alternative energy. And there's a book that I have that I would recommend to people by a brilliant author named Stan Cox, and that is The Green New Deal and Beyond. And he goes into a lot of the issues about alternative energy. The assumptions that, you know, there's no problems, and he provides an enormous amount of documentation. So I would urge that, or if you want to email me my phone or call me, my phone number is on almost all the announcements for this, so you can call me about that. I want to say that I really like the comment that Tommy James put in the chat, which is we have to rethink what advancement means, what progress means, and be brave enough to totally rethink civilization. I would say that the problem with the energy production today is people are searching for what sort of energy is the silver bullet, what's the magical key, what is the perpetual motion machine that will solve all the problems. There's a very simple answer to what is green energy. Green energy is less energy. Anything that requires more energy is ungreen energy. And there are countless examples throughout the world today of people who write and think and Aboriginal attitudes, tribal attitudes about how to do things with less energy. And what capitalism constantly pushes us to do is to think, how can we use more energy to do what we need to do? So yeah, we need to challenge dams and nuclear power and fossil fuels and the tremendous problems that go along with solar power and wind power. What's the alternative to that? It's to create a society where billions of people throughout the planet come up with ideas about how to get a better quality of life while using less energy. And I think if we use that creative energy of people, we can use less of the physical energy, all forms of which are incredibly destructive.
Thank you. So we're going to have, we have 3 more questions. I know that Nina LAKHANI has to get going because she has an early flight in the morning. But for those of you who do not, our guest speakers, please stay and hopefully we can answer some of just 3 more questions. We're going to take all 3 questions in a row, but just before that, I just want to plug one more time, Who Killed Berta Cáceres? That is available on Verso Books. And if someone can put a link to that, that would be wonderful, but also on other places that I won't name. But so we will take 3 questions. Johnny Sims, Jaron Gary, and Kent Rowe. Just ask your questions all 3 in a row before we have our guest speakers to answer those. And if Nina wants to give her final thoughts before she has to get going, that would be wonderful too. So Johnny.
Yeah, hi, sorry. I was warning about Costa Rica. They seem to have dodged the bullet on a lot of the violence and things like that. I was wondering if that's true. Maybe I just missed something. And if it is true, how did they do it? Thank you.
Thank you, Johnny. Jaron?
Hello, my question was just regarding the direct carbon footprint that comes from the U.S. military, if someone could speak to that.
Thank you, Jaron. Kent Rowe? You here?
Yes, I was just curious about the banks and products that we consume. Is there any way to know what we're consuming is actually being a part of the tyranny that we face today? And I have something called, maybe some of you know it, Boycott on their phones. When you go to the store, you just click on that app and match the barcode, and then after you join these campaigns, and it tells you where your products come from.
Can you, I missed the second question. Could I get, what was the second question again?
Jaron?
Hello, do you hear me?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I just was asking in general about the direct carbon footprint that comes from the U.S. military.
Well, I don't have statistics in front of me, but as you might suspect, it's huge. A tank typically gets, or an armored vehicle, I think I read somewhere, it's about something like 1/4 to 1/2 gallon, 1 mile to 1/2 gallon or something like that. It's a huge expenditure there. And you can imagine fighter planes, and so I can't give you a figure, but as you might expect, when you just think about the nature of the modern military, It's probably, I would guess it's probably the largest single institutional consumer of electricity and or of energy. Just to go to the Costa Rica question, then maybe Donald or Judy will field the others. So Costa Rica is often regarded as the big exception in Latin America because it doesn't have a military. There's a joke that says, who needs a military when you have a press like that? That's supposed to be funny, but and in fact, they have it's starting in the 1980s during the Central America and the U.S. wars in Central America. Costa Rica began to build up its police forces, and so they look a lot like a military. Not so much different than this country either, is it? The big difference, though, probably why until recently Costa Rica has escaped a lot of the same kinds of problems that confront the other Central American countries, has to do with after 1948, there was what the Costa Ricans call a revolution. Might not really be worthy of that name, but I can't get into details now. But the big upshot of it was that in eliminating their military, they did actually create, along with Uruguay, one of the larger welfare social democratic systems in Latin America. Uruguay and Costa Rica are huge exceptions in this respect in terms of how much money they spend on education, a universal healthcare system, okay? Now, having said that, I've already alluded to the fact that in a sense, their military spending has started really increasing in the 80s. Second of all, a lot of Americans have decided they want to retire in Costa Rica. That's put a lot of pressure on the land and driven up prices and made lots of problems for peasants who are moving into the cities. Third, Costa Rica, to sustain their system, has gone pretty deeply into debt and has faced pressure from the IMF, very familiar story, to decrease their fiscal spending on social welfare measures. So there is an interesting story there in Costa Rica, and it is different, largely having to do with the size of their social welfare system and their kind of social democratic structures that have made them probably the most stable liberal democracy. That some people would say that's a contradiction in terms, but it's a most stable social, we'll call it a social democracy in the Central American region, but it's experiencing a lot of pressures these days as well, and it's beginning to unfortunately begin to look like more like some of its neighbors. I hope that answered your question.
Well, I just could add something to that too. Just think about where the U.S. Army has invaded in the 20th century. Every place in Central America except for Costa Rica. Mexico several times. Guatemala, we overthrew their government in 1954, and the CIA has been very active in Guatemala. El Salvador, you might remember the little war there in the 1980s. Nicaragua, and Honduras. Honduras is the original so-called banana republic, although they hate being called that, and Panama. And so, U.S. imperial control over most of Central America, it has, been sustained for, more than a century. And I think that has a lot to do with, what's happened in those places. I would just add, currently the U.S. has at least 9 bases in Honduras alone. And Honduras is our large Air Force base, Soto Cano, is, like the center of U.S. power for not just Central America, but the Caribbean, reaching all the way down to basically Venezuela. And the maintenance of U.S. influence in Central America is considered to be, in Honduras, is considered to be extremely important to U.S. interests. And so, it doesn't matter, whether you've got a narco dictator as your president, as long as he's our president and he does, he helps maintain U.S. military interests and security interests and economic interests there.
Yeah, I got a few things I'd like to say about the U.S. military. I'm like Dan. I used to have the numbers in terms of how much energy it uses. But I do know that the US military is larger than the next 5, 6, or 7 countries combined. And I do know that the amount of oil which the US military uses increases by a factor of 4 every time it goes to a war. In other words, in Iraq, they had to have air-conditioned bases for the American troops that were there. And it takes a huge amount of energy to move the military machinery. So it's not just economically, military expenditures are very interesting because everything else you can say that the value of the commodity is very small. In other words, how much people spend to produce something and the product you get is very small because it's designed to fall apart. It's designed not to last very long. The military is the only area of the economy which actually has a negative value for what it adds to the quality of people's life, because military spending is the only type of spending which is specifically to destroy other areas of the economy in other parts of the world. So really, if we're talking about conserving energy and using green energy, really getting rid of the energy which is used for the military, getting rid of it would be a lot more valuable than saying the military should be able to have wars formed with wars fought with green weapons instead of having wars fought with fossil fuel weapons, which is really the direction that a lot of alternative energy advocates are taking, that we need to green the military. We don't need to green the military. We need to defund the military.
Great. Any more comments from our speakers?
You have a hand up. Coffee, right, has her hand up and she's waiting.
Unmute yourself, Coffee.
That would be our last, probably our last question for tonight, but thank you.
I know I'm out of here after this one.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, yes, I just had a question. I was wondering, is there any way we can put together a list of places, companies, banks that we can stop supporting here in the United States in effort to help this at some capacity? I mean, if we can stop financing some of this, I think that would be a plus as we think of other solutions and continue the fight. Is there any way that can happen? And that goes to whatever panelists, whoever has the ideas, thoughts, or the possibilities of that being a reality.
Well, the German playwright Bertolt Brecht once said, he had put in the words of Mac the Knife, what is robbing a bank compared to owning one? And the only thing to say is that, the list would be just about every bank. There may be some exceptions. There may be some commercial, some grassroots kinds of savings associations and communities. But for the most part, it's such capitalism is such a web. Everything is so interlocked that it's, usually when you hear about boycotts, they're sort of aimed at the most egregious offenders, right? So to make a list, it's almost like you'd have to sort of pick the issue and then pick the worst offenders and start with them. Now, that's not helping you much, but to me, that would be, we could put every bank in the country on the list, every financial institution, but probably be pretty hard for us to be able to buy a computer without, think about how much just about everybody listening here is probably in some way indebted to a bank, whether they want to be or not. It's going to be hard to unravel, that's for sure. So maybe Don or Judy has a better answer for you than I can give.
Well, I'd agree. I mean, this is a global system. In fact, the banks that finance the Agua Zarca Dam, which Berta was opposing, one was Dutch and the other was Finnish, as well as Ficosa Bank and some other banks inside Honduras. It wasn't U.S. capital, But, you know, some of a lot of the privatization that goes on in countries like Honduras is dictated by the IMF and the World Bank. Those are requirements of the loans that they get. And yes, the US, you know, if you're going to boycott anything, get the US to, you know, change its policies towards the World Bank and the IMF, because they're the ones who are demanding these neoliberal reforms, which are causing so much pain. But it's really a global system.
Yeah, I agree pretty much with what Dan said. It's like what is being criticized at the time. I mean, if people wanted to talk about a corporation that should be jumped on right now, it's Amazon, because the workers in Alabama are doing such a good, you know, the organizers there are doing such a good job trying to win that election. And everybody buys things, you know, sells things through Amazon. So I would say if you're going to target a capitalist entity right now today, it would be Amazon.
Coffee, just one more comment. I think maybe this is a good place to take a lesson from the civil rights movement, and particularly for those parts of the civil rights movement that addressed housing issues and still do, but especially in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, and how they targeted financial institutions to try to get them to change their behavior regarding redlining. Were they successful? Only partially, but they made some progress, right? And so I think by thinking locally, what are the big problems in the community? And I know the Greens and Don probably would be able to supply some really good ideas about where to start in the St. Louis area, but wherever you live, I would say, look at the powerful institutions that might be impacted. I was thinking recently, until the guy died, you know, we had Rush Limbaugh, and we have KMOX radio, three hours a day, every weekday, broadcasting Rush Limbaugh. And I kept thinking, why don't we do something about that? I didn't get off my duff soon enough because Limbaugh died, but there's still plenty of work to get done, right? So, you know, I would say if you can organize people, pick a cause, look, you got to really be strategic and even tactical. You know, where are the weak points in the system? Where are the industries that think they've got to present an image of being green? And how can they be pushed to go further? That's how the approach I would take to the banks. Look in your own community and see where the financing is and what they're doing, and then target them.
All right, so we are right at around 2 hours, and we have a lot to think about. I've never seen a chat in a Zoom this active before in my life, and I've seen a lot of too many Zoom chats over the past several months. So I'm just going to ask if any of our co-presenters have any very, very brief final thoughts, and we're going to go ahead and say our goodbyes. If not, any final thoughts?
It's been 2 hours and 20 minutes.
I got a final thought, and I'm going to make this as brief as I possibly can. And that is, Dan gave some good facts about lithium. I would just like to say very briefly that lithium is at least as damaging as dams. I could go on and on about all the incredibly destructive effects of mining lithium, and the fact that there's oppositions to lithium mining, not just in Latin America and Bolivia and Argentina and Chile, but there's opposition all over the world. But one fact I got about lithium, I think it's very interesting. It's from Portugal, where people are fighting lithium mining there. And the opponents say the process of mining for lithium, a non-renewable source, will result in high levels of CO2 emissions. They estimated that each lithium mine will emit an additional 1.8 million tons of greenhouse gases per year. The other interesting fact about lithium is that if you wanted to provide all the world with lithium cars, that would, in order to do that, it would require 5 times the amount of lithium which is in the ground in order to do that. And so the countries that are being told now they're going to create these wonderful jobs by lithium mining, what's going to happen is that's going to last for 10 years, maybe 20 years, maybe 30 years. And after the ecology of the area is totally destroyed, the world capitalism will go on from one gadget, a lithium car and computers, to a whole new series of gadgets. And the countries that have supplied the lithium will have their ecosystems totally destroyed. Lithium is a very short-term solution to problems, and it will inevitably, those areas that succumb to lithium mining will inevitably be destroyed in 3 decades and probably a lot sooner.
Right on. So this has been a wonderful event. I can't believe we still have over 100 participants after 2 hours. So wonderful speakers, and all of you had presented different parts of the same, a very similar presentation. And it was just very, very inspiring. Again, I'd like to thank our speakers, Nina LAKHANI, JUDY ANCEL, Dan Hellinger, Don Fitz, and of course our hosts, the Black and Green Alliance, Universal African Peoples Organization, and the Gateway Greens of Missouri. Thank you so much for putting on this wonderful event. Hopefully that we'll be able to all come together. I think so many of us have a similar goal, right? That we can come together, do more of these events, and actually do actions together. So I'm looking forward to this future collaboration with all of you.
It's being recorded, so people should be able, Joe should be able to get out the information about how to access the recording to share it with other folks.
Yeah,
Bye, everybody.
About 2
Thank
days.
you all. Bye. Great to see you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye, folks.
Thank you.
Okay, stay safe. Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Thank you.
Good night, Emmanuel.
Good night.
Good night, comrades.
Hasta
to the
luego.
people.
Compañeros, hasta
Good
luego.
night, everyone.
Thank you and good night.
Night.
Night. Power to the people.
Oh, Angie was on. I didn't think I couldn't find her for quite a
So
while.
when you want to leave, you just go there. It's very good.
I just couldn't hear.
Well, I hope I didn't miss anyone. I was going crazy looking at that that chat, which is great. It was hard to keep up.
Hey, this event was so good because we had such a good moderator.
Yay, Tony.
Oh, thanks.
So I mean,
I usually do better, but
volunteer Tony and Dege to moderate all of the programs that are being done from now on.
Tony, that was a lot. You did great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Joe Savatini, you put up with a lot of dumb questions from me about how to moderate. So you had to send batches of reminders to batches of 16 people to 342 folks. Is that right?
I'm sorry?
Yeah, doing it the way Tony showed me. And it was like 22 pages and you have to send each one.
It was really good. Thank you.
So once the recording is up, you have the 342 people who signed up, don't you, Joe?
Yeah, so what I could do is export that list and we can send it.
Okay, so you export that, and I will send out the the link to everybody, and I want to send everybody out the article I wrote about the construction of dams in Himalayas, because that's just too stupid to believe. I mean, it's
Well, they just had a dam collapse in that area
Yeah.
in India.
well, in China they killed 171,000 people with the idiotic construction of dams. And, I mean, India has learned absolutely nothing from it and just goes hog wild in building dams in an area where no sane person would ever build a dam.
Where glaciers are melting. Right.
Yeah. So it's really the dams that benefit local people are fine, but that's not even 1% of the dams. I mean, dams are built to export energy to areas outside of that. So anyway, we'll talk about that another time. Tony and Joe, just thanks enormously for all the technical and the coordinating stuff that you did.
Thank you. You put a lot of work into this, and it's very impressive turnout.
Well, yeah, it's because we had like 26, 27 co-sponsors, and apparently everybody sent their material out, and so we had people from all over the country and from Canada. We had one or two people signing up from Australia and from other countries. So I don't know. I mean, you have to get up at 7 o'clock in the morning in Australia to tune in. But yeah, we had a really good turnout of people from all over the place.
Got it.
Well, and I want to say one thing. I think the thing about this that impressed me was that it's not just singing to the choir, because I think a lot of people were informed and were rethinking ideas about green energy and what that means. So I think it's really an important program. And
I just think all of the presenters had like a different piece of the same, different angles of what we needed to hear, which was that just, I don't know if that was your master plan or it just happened to work out that way.
Well, it was both. You can design things as well as you want to design them, but once somebody starts talking, it's up to them what they want to say.
Yeah.
And so
that was good.
Like everybody, it was really good because everybody had a different perspective. And I just wish I was sorry that we missed a couple of the folks who were co-sponsors who wanted to say something and we couldn't get them on us. I felt bad about that.
Oh, that's fine. I mean, that was a lot of, I think it worked out. Everything worked out just fine. Yeah. All right. Well, I'm going to log off, but thank you for this experience, and hopefully let's do this again.
Okay, Joe, if you want to put an end to it, you can, because
Hey, I want to let you know we had at the highest we had was 184.
wow.
Well, that's better than the 75 we had at our next highest.
Right. About 150 when we started, and it grew up to 184 at one point.
That's impressive.
Yeah.
All right. Good night, everyone. Good night.
All right. Good night.